The 2016 to 2017 Boston Celtics gave fans one of the most exciting runs in recent years as unexpected star Isaiah Thomas led the team to the Eastern Conference Finals. Back then, Jaylen Brown was still a rookie and Boston still featured guys like Jay Crowder, Al Horford, and Avery Bradley. And Jayson Tatum wasn't even in the NBA back then. But 4 years later, the Celtics have been to a couple more conference finals appearances after that, but ultimately, Brad Stevens is yet to lead this team to the NBA Finals. And rightfully so, entering the 2021 season, Boston was again expected by a lot of people to be frontrunners to top the East, especially after falling just 2 games short to the Miami Heat in last season's conference finals. But right now, despite having 2 young all-stars in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, why are the Celtics actually struggling to live up to the expectations once again, at least this time of the season? So what's good guys, it's Rero Balls here, and today we'll look into the Celtics situation to answer if it's actually a legitimate argument that this team, despite having a young core, is trending on a downward trajectory. And has general manager Danny Ainge really failed to capitalize on his assets in order to build the right roster that would be capable of making the NBA Finals? Or are people in general just expecting too much from the Boston Celtics? But before we move on, make sure to hit that like button if you happen to enjoy this video. It only takes a second of your time, but it definitely helps the channel grow and it will be much appreciated. So let's get to it. Actually, it's not new to see teams to have 3 conference finals appearances within a 5-year span without making the NBA Finals. Before Brad Stevens Celtics, the 1950s Boston teams also experienced this, along with the late 70s to early 80s Spurs teams, the 1980s Bucks teams, as well as the infamous 90s Jazz and Pacers squads. And among these teams, 3 of them have been able to eventually make the NBA Finals after a season or 2. Well, we're not sure if today's version of the Celtics would be able to do the same thing, but what we know for sure is that Boston is one of the best, if not the best, young 1-2 punches in the league in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Currently, Boston has the luxury of playing 2 interchangeable star wing players who can defend multiple positions and score buckets against the tightest of defenses together on the floor. This season, Tatum has fully taken over the reins as Boston's player of the future, while Brown has shown that he's not just a number 2 option at best. As currently, both Tatum and Brown have been on a scoring tear, averaging 25 points and 24 points per game respectively, while taking turns in leading this Boston squad after the departure of Gordon Hayward and after injuries to veteran guard Kemba Walker and longtime two-way stud Marcus Smart. And as of the moment, other than the Brooklyn Nets, the Celtics are the only other team in the NBA to have 2 players in the top 20 in scoring this season in Brown and Tatum. So if you look at it, Boston is still relatively in a much better position roster-wise as compared to other contending teams. Well, of course, they're still a top 5 team in the East right now, and they still have a lot of time to probably make it to at least the top 2 seed by the end of the regular season. But to me, it's just kinda concerning that this team obviously lacks the toughness which took them to the conference finals 3 of the last 4 years. During the past 3 seasons, the Celtics' worst offensive year came in 2017 to 2018 when they ranked 18th in offensive rating. But last season, they were really good offensively, ranking 4th in the entire league. But as of the moment, they only ranked 12th in the NBA. And more importantly, the Celtics have been a consistently strong defensive team the past 3 years. They were the best defense in the league in 2018 and they were the 4th best defense last season. But right now, they have failed to live up to their defensive identity as they're currently a below average defensive team which ranks 21st in the entire league. So as you can see, this season marks the first time in 4 years that the Celtics neither have a top 10 offense or a top 10 defense. And so this brings us to that question which has been asked too many times before, and that pertains to how Danny Ainge has been doing in terms of roster building. I mean, has he really been doing the right things and making the right decisions in the past few years to lead the Celtics to a championship? Well, I think first of all, you gotta give credit where credit is due because of course, the Celtics have had the 7th best record in the NBA from 2010 to 2020, and a huge part of that is because of how Danny Ainge has been able to create competitive rosters year in and year out. Of course, Danny Ainge should always be credited for fleecing the Brooklyn Nets in that 2013 trade which landed him the necessary picks to find his future franchise stars. stars. Of course, he took Jaylen Brown 3rd overall in 2016, even when Brown wasn't seen as a real consensus player to be picked that high. And of course, you also gotta credit him for opting to trade down in 2017 in order to grab Jayson Tatum instead of Markelle Fultz. And of course, being able to land high-profile free agents like Al Horford and Gordon Hayward are no easy accomplishments to pull off as well. But also, if you're a Celtics fan, you also might be wondering why guys like Horford, Hayward, and Kyrie are all gone now, with Danny Ainge only getting a single trade exception in return. Should he have instead traded Hayward to the Pacers in exchange for Myles Turner, who as of the moment looks like he could be the answer to the Celtics' problems in the center position? Well, honestly, I think it's still quite premature to put the blame on Danny Ainge or even Brad Stevens based on how the team has been playing below expectations, because I think we have to at least give this roster a chance to show how they would do in the postseason. But still, I think it's just no coincidence that the Sixers, the Nets, and the Bucks are currently the top 3 teams in the East after making significant moves to improve their rosters last offseason, which the Celtics obviously failed to do. I mean, they've added veterans in Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson, but of course, as we know, those two guys haven't exactly been ceiling raisers for this team. But to me, the Celtics probably just haven't had a lot of continuity during the past few years, and it's definitely hard to be better than you were last season when your roster has been continuously changing. And if you look at it, during the past 4 seasons, the team went from having Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford before transitioning to being a Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward team up until they've kind of handed the offensive keys to Kemba Walker and Jayson Tatum last year. And also, out of all the guys from the 2017 to 2018 roster who took LeBron and the Cavs to Game 7 of the conference finals, only Brown, Tatum, Smart, Ojale, and Tice have remained with the Celtics to this day. So I think to that extent, there's always a huge deal of adjustment required of Brad Stevens, especially in the playoffs. And further, the Celtics are the 5th youngest team in the NBA right now with an average age of 25.1 years. And to put that into context, among the 10 youngest teams in the league, only the Celtics and the Denver Nuggets currently occupy a playoff spot. While Jayson Tatum, Marcus Smart, and Jaylen Brown may have had their share of conference finals experiences in the past, but Boston as a whole is the 3rd least experienced team in the NBA right now, with its players only averaging 3.6 seasons of league experience, which could be attributed to the Celtics' recent influx of young players being plugged into their rotation. While Payton Pritchard is playing the 7th most minutes on the team despite being a rookie, while other young players like Ojale and Grant Williams also ranked 9th and 10th in minutes played for the team. And also throughout the season, the Celtics rotation has been quite unpredictable but not in a good way, because currently they have 6 different players in Ojale, Teague, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Aaron Nesmith, and Javonte Green, who are all playing at least 15 minutes per game, but all of whom are also averaging less than 7 points each. And obviously, we know Kemba Walker is still trying to find his groove back from injury, and it definitely shows with his averages of 18.5 points and 4.6 assists on 38% shooting from the field and 36% from 3, all of which are lower than his career averages and also worse than his averages last season. Well, he's been much better during the past few games before the All-Star break, which is a good sign. But for a guy like Kemba who's only 6 foot tall, losing a step because of injury could be devastating, especially because the guy heavily relies on his ability to create space one-on-one against defenders in the perimeter. Personally, I have no doubts as to whether or not he would be able to produce come playoff time, because he's been in a lot of clutch situations before, obviously. But I think the only concern really is, for a guy who's taking 30% of the team's cap space, can Kemba really stay healthy enough for him to be able to contribute as the team's 3rd best player when needed the most? But despite all of this, there are a number of silver linings which could potentially fuel a deep playoff run for the Celtics, at least in the future. Payton Pritchard has been stellar with his offense and his ability to seemingly always be on the right spots, as the rookie is currently shooting 40% from deep on a decent 3.4 attempts per game. And also, Robert Williams is looking like a future championship piece with his 7'6" wingspan and athletic ability, as he's been showing a lot of promise with his rim running and shot blocking ability. While definitely, Danny Ainge will have to pull off some moves if he wants to solidify the Celtics roster for the future. Being active during the trade deadline would be great, but I just don't think there are a lot of guys who would be readily available for the Celtics as of the moment. Nikola Vucevic would be a great fit, but he would also be a very expensive piece to acquire. Victor Oladipo could be available, but are the Celtics really willing to give up a significant number of assets for a short-term rental? Jerami Grant is a very interesting option who would be a great two-way fix for the team in the long run, but I just don't think the Pistons would be willing to trade him just yet. While I think Thaddeus Young might be the easiest to acquire because Boston would probably just need to give up a part of their massive traded player exception plus a few assets to pry him away from the Bulls, but I think it still definitely wouldn't make the Celtics a finals team despite the toughness and the size that he would bring. So overall, there are just a lot of questions left unanswered for this team, and to put things into perspective, the Celtics don't look the same relative to recent seasons, but the truth is, they actually lost depth and continuity while also getting much younger as a team. And so, could it be that we just expected too much from this team despite them possibly being just right where they need to be as of the moment? But whatever the answer may be, the good thing is that Boston has the time to build around their young stars. Both Tatum and Brown are locked up at least for the next 3 to 4 years, and that's a lot of time for them to figure out how to lead this team to the NBA Finals or even to an NBA championship given the right circumstances. Thank you for sticking until the end of the video, and as always, feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and also do consider subscribing if you're new to the channel. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.